So let's jump into the box office from this past weekend. The total domestic pull from this weekend, I think, was about $132 million. So about 21% jump. We had 4 films actually in the top 10 that were opening this week. Sad to see Kung Fu Panda 4 knocking Dune Part 2 out of its first place spot. I'll talk about Dune in a bit. I'll put a pin in that one. Kung Fu Panda opening this weekend, coming in at number 1, bringing in $58 million for the weekend. It was projected, unless I read the projections wrong, it was projected to make about $30 to $39 million in its opening weekend. So this far surpasses the original estimates. So I'm sure DreamWorks and Universal, which owns DreamWorks, is pretty happy about this. It was made for about an $85 million budget, and it's made about $81 million worldwide already. So this is easily on track to make back its budget. Now, will it be as popular as the other Kung Fu Panda films, which I've only seen the first one, but from my understanding, as you go from the first to the second to the third, it's kind of diminishing returns in terms of quality. And I haven't heard, I've heard this one isn't all that great, but so we'll see if it has legs the way Universal's other animation studio, Illumination, will this have legs the way that Migration has had legs? And we'll talk about that in a bit. But as we kind of, Migration was benefited by the fact that it didn't really have much competition for quite some time, probably until now with Kung Fu Panda 4, so it's kind of like Universal cannibalizing its success here. And, this is only the beginning of a very busy release schedule, basically for the rest of the year. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of success Kung Fu Panda 4 has going forward. Also opening, coming at number 3, the horror kind of like almost audio drama, partial audio drama horror film, Imaginary, coming in about $10 million. I was projected to make about 8 to 15, so right kind of in the middle of those projections. It was made for about $11 million budget. I have not heard great things about this, so I would not be surprised if this kind of likes what was the film earlier this year? Night Swim, right? That had a pretty precipitous drop in its second weekend. I see this kind of having a similar trajectory. Also opening this week at number 4 is Cabrini, which I didn't really know much about. I guess it's about the first American saint in the Catholic Church. So that's kind of interesting, I guess. Like this nun that comes over from wherever she's from. If her name's Cabrini, I would imagine Italy. It grossed about $7.6 million this weekend. It was made for a $50 million budget, though. So I'm curious to see what kind of success and legs it has kind of going forward. And then at number 9, we have this Chinese film called YOLO. But because it's Chinese, I'm imagining that is not the acronym You Only Live Once. And it made into the top 10 despite only making less than $1 million at the box office, only making about $840,000 at the box office this weekend, which I think just speaks to, while the box office in general has had a huge surge, a lot of that pie is being split between fewer projects, right? So that's kind of the newer films coming out this week. Continuing, again, as I mentioned, knocked down from its first place spot down to second. In its second week is Dune Part 2. Sigh. So it grossed about $46 million this weekend. I think last weekend it made about $81 million. So it's about a 44% drop, which is not awful, but, the idealistic side of me wanted this to have a not even a drop, a jump, just because the movie's so good. But, this is totally serviceable, and I think this is going to have really great word of mouth and just kind of hopefully keep chugging along, but we'll see as more and more big players enter the marketplace. So far it's grossed about not 857, 157 million domestically and 368 million worldwide. I can't remember. I talked about last week. I compared its opening to the original film's opening. And again, these results still indicate to me that this is going to do much better than the first one, just because it's a better film and it's a very different film market than late 2021, right? A couple other kind of notes here, kind of looking through spots 5, 6, and 7, all taken by films that are still like about a month month-ish old, give or take. Coming in number 5, we have Bob Marley, One Love, dropped from 2nd to 5th place in its 4th frame, but has had a surprisingly decent box office run. Right now it's at 89 million domestic, 161 million worldwide, so it's crossed that, that century mark worldwide. I guess there's enough of an interest in Bob Marley to warrant that success, I guess. Then you have at number 6, Ordinary Angels, dropping from 3rd to 6th. Again, this makes sense, all these big drops, just because you have these huge players taking up like those first kind of couple spots. And then newer movies that aren't huge hits, but they're new, so they're going to have a bigger opening, right? And it's only made about 16 million domestically and worldwide, but again, I don't, this was always going to be a smaller take for a film like this. And then you have Madame Web. It's still in the top 10, which I'm actually kind of surprised about. In its 4th week, dropped from 5th to 7th place. Pretty huge drop, a 65% drop. And it hasn't even grossed 100 million worldwide. So this one, you can write this one in the books as a bomb. Or at least very much a flop, a very strong flop, if not a bomb. But again, I talked about Migration. Migration is still in the top 10. It grossed a small, humble sum of about $1 million, 1.1 million. Dropped from 6th to 8th in its 12th frame. So this thing's been in theaters for 3 months. And it's grossed 125 million domestically, 282 million worldwide. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I was not expecting this from this movie, again, because it's a pretty okay movie. I don't think has the same branding potential as some of Illumination's other stuff, like the Despicable Me Minions universe, or even something like Secret Life of Pets, or any of like the Dr. Seuss properties that they've worked on. So I'm really surprised to see this success, and I'm not an expert in all of this, but I would imagine this has something to do with just not having really much competition until now, Kung Fu Panda 4. And then, probably for the last time I'm going to talk about this, Wonka is still in the top 10 after 13 weeks. It has dropped from 8th to 10th place, only grossing about $600,000 this weekend. Again, now that we actually have bigger films, audiences are clearly starting to move away from Wonka. But in its 13th week, it's still in the top 10, grossing about 218 million domestically, 626 million worldwide. I still have yet to see it. I've heard it's better than you would think, but still not great. But what a box office run that this movie has had. If we were annoyed and fed up with these like unnecessary prequels about characters that don't really need a prequel, if you don't like those, I have bad news for you, that there's going to be more of them, because this has been very successful. We have a comment here. Yay! Viviana Metzger says, "Yay, go Po!" Referring to, I would imagine, Po from Kung Fu Panda. Yes, he again, I'm surprised that it beat out Dune, but I guess because it is able to reach a wider audience by just being a more family-friendly film. So I guess that makes sense, but I'm curious to see, what, how it's able to sustain itself, and I wonder if that and Dune will maybe flip-flop next week.